Mrs. Burns. She was my Rose Festival court chaperone. When I first met her, I thought, oh, she is so gracious, and that has not changed a bit.
You're always happy to see Gwen because she is just delightful, just plain delightful.
I think Gwen is one of the most generous persons I know, both in donating time to nonprofits or making contributions to a nonprofit and worthy causes. She's a great lady.
When you meet Gwen, you just meet the family. Her family's first in her life.
If we go back in time, our great-great-great-grandparents came across on the covered wagon. It was, I think, in 1844, which was one of the first 3 years of the wagon trains. So since the 1840s, our family has been here.
Well, when Jack and I were married, I was told we could never have children. So I always have felt in my heart that they were gifts from God. And Scott, he's been a very easy child to raise. He was the easiest of my 3 children to raise. And then along came Bruce, and he's a very special young guy in that if Jack and I went out in the evening when they were old enough to stay alone, when Jack and I would come home at the end of the evening, we would go in to get ready for bed, and our bed was turned back, and Bruce had always written a poem or a picture. There was always one for us. And Heather, of course, was very special in that there were no girls in the family. And her dad named her long before she was born. And in those days, you know, they couldn't predict whether you were having a boy or a girl. And he said, if we ever have a daughter, her name is going to be Heather Burns, no middle name, because that name should carry on. He felt very strongly that with a name like Burns, and being Scottish, that they should have Scottish names. Consequently, Scott, Bruce, and Heather.
It's a joy to know any one of the Burns, and when I had contact with all of them, I got to tell you, there's a good family.
On March 3rd, 1947, my uncle and my father started the company with some help from their parents. And their father was the district manager for Standard Oil Company. And so he had an inside line on this new thing called a truck stop. A station was built on Southeast Union and Grand Avenue in the Central East Side Industrial District, and they opened the business on March 3rd. That's how they started the business. Bob worked 12 hours straight, and then he turned it over to my dad, who worked 12 hours straight, and they did that 7 days a week for several years until they got the business to the point where they could hire others to fill in for them so they didn't have to work 7 days a week.
My dad and the Burns family had a great relationship. And over the years, this competitor concept I came out of school with started to drift sideways a little bit. Like, this wasn't the normal competitor. These people were very nice and very special and weren't trying to hurt us, and actually were trying to help us. You must remember in 1956, the Interstate Highway Act was signed and the freeways were being built in the 60s and 70s, and the industry was springing up on the interchanges. And so it was a very new thing, and Jack Burns was a leader in that, and he sought help, and so he was very, very friendly. And it's that kind of integrity that I noticed, and they saw the industry as a bigger hill to climb, and the credibility and of the industry was important. The legitimacy of the industry was important.
The Burns family has been involved in ringing bells at Christmas time with the Salvation Army. This has been a project that has been going on for 73 years with Downtown Rotary and Salvation Army. And so our family has enjoyed doing this for all of those years. And whether it was my grandfather or my dad and my brother, and then now all of us become involved, and we are out there ringing bells. This has been very special, and so the grandchildren have become all involved, and hopefully we'll get another generation out there in the future too.
Gwen's family is a superlative example of joining as a team to support a worthy cause. Jack and Gwen set a tone in raising their outstanding family to think of others and to give of themselves. These three Burns children found wonderful spouses who continue the Burns impact in our community.
There's a verse in the Bible that's Luke 12:48. To whom much is given, much is required. That sums up the Burns family. Their faith in God, and everything flows from that. They feel a responsibility in giving back to the community.
I think the one thing I'm so thankful for with Mom and Dad, the values that they've taught us is to like people, to enjoy people, to look into their faces and know that they're a created being just like we are for a purpose, and no matter what their countenance would be or what their needs would be, to empathize, have compassion and help and have fun.
Well, I think giving actually slows down the aging process. You know, I say that tongue-in-cheek, but I really mean it. I think that if you're going to live a vital and fulfilling life, a part of that is to give back. And it doesn't mean writing a check. It means volunteering and getting involved, or both.
I became a student at Portland State as well. It was finally my turn to go back to school, and people would see me on campus and they'd say, "Oh, you're Scott's wife. Thank you so much. You have no idea of what your family's done." And I would say, "Oh, well, you're more than welcome." And I'd get home and say, "Scott, I have no idea of what we just did." And he would tell me, and I would say, "How can we afford that?" And he would say, "How can we afford not to? Think of what we've been given. How can we afford not to?" And so it really started to work on my heart, the whole idea of philanthropy and giving.
Our court, our 1971 court, is a very special court. If you talk to other chaperones in past years, they just don't get together. And the fact that there's still about 8 or 9 of us that meet a couple times a year, we talk about our families, we all have pictures, we're all showing pictures, we're all still very good friends. And that is very special. And we really say that's because of Gwen. She calls us up, she keeps our addresses, she keeps everything current, and she wants to know where everyone is, she wants to know how everyone is, and she just keeps on top of it. She's amazing, but she's really the glue that keeps us together.
Gwen became the first female member of the Rose Festival Board of Directors.
One year, I took the Rose Festival Queen to Sapporo, Japan, representing the Portland Rose Festival and the State Department. They were having a very large trade fair. It was a very interesting week. I've never eaten so much sushi and sashimi in my life. There's
Rarely a time that when you stop by that she's not baking cookies. Her father was an owner of a bakery, and so I think that a lot of those skills were passed on to her. Her mother and father both love to bake. She doesn't like to cook, she likes to bake.
My father had a bakery when I was a little girl. He had a Danish bakery, and I used to go upstairs to the bakery, and I would go up and sit and watch Johnny and Hans bake things.
My mom loves to bake, and she starts baking Christmas cookies about October. And then she's always baking for friends and family, everybody. And wherever she goes, she brings a plate of cookies.
If Gwen could have one quote about her life and her theory on volunteerism, it would be, "It can start with just a cookie."
think my children have said it very well. I just feel I'm the luckiest person in the world. When you're 85 and can have a family like this, how lucky can you get?